My best body in the last decade was my post-divorce weight. So
Were you depressed?
probably, but I was also just living at my parents' house for like 3 months while we resolved what to do with the house. And so I
Mhm.
was making myself a salad for lunch, having a can of soup for dinner, and then a
Oh
Klondike
God.
bar. And then I was also
Ugh.
running like 4 or 5 miles a day.
Yeah, you were depressed. Okay. Okay. Nobody does all that just for shits and giggles.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a WCNY podcast about power and politics in state government. On this week's episode, we're turning our spotlight onto the New York State Association of Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislators, which is hosting its annual Caucus weekend in Albany this Valentine's Day weekend. This is the association's 54th annual conference, which attracts thousands of attendees and is best known for panel discussions and ritzy parties. And it was the spending on the latter that was the subject of reporting and eventually a settlement with the State Attorney General's office. We'll discuss all of that later in the show with the association's executive director, Charlene Gayle. But first, we're going to gab about some of the headlines from the past week with Shontell Smith, head of the New York practice for Tusk Strategies, where she is a partner. So, Chantel, Monday was supposed to be the day that the Assembly and Senate would move legislation introduced 3 days earlier by the legislative leaders, updating the special election calendar with the intent of keeping Congresswoman Elise Stefanik's seat vacant longer after she eventually takes over as UN ambassador. Everything was ready for this bill to move at the start of the week, with Governor Hochul even announcing her general support a week earlier, but the legislation never even got a committee vote in either house, with reports from my Capitol colleagues indicating that the governor put the kibosh on things in order to preserve a good working relationship with President Donald Trump. We can get into whether this is a good negotiation tact by the governor, but for starters, how mad do you think the legislative leaders and rank and file Democrats are about how this situation has played out so far?
It's my understanding that they are very upset. And it's not for the reason why we think. I don't know how to say it. I always feel like I'm going to get myself in trouble, but here we go. This wasn't even the legislative leader's idea to do this bill. So for the framing of this, that the governor put the kibosh on it, it gives the impression that the speaker and the majority leader was like, we're going to do this bill. Let's do this bill. At least Stefanik, Republicans. No, from what I hear, and I'm pretty in the streets, this came from the federal folks.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
I don't like to name names, but it came
That's
from the federal.
that's what the New York Times has reported.
Okay. So yeah, Hakeem spoke to the governor. The governor introduced this idea to the leaders. I can speak for Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins because I've worked with this woman for over a decade. This is not something she would be like, yeah, let's do it. Like, this is not something that she's going to actively pursue. She decides, they have whatever meetings and it's decided collectively to do it. She briefs the conference, speaker briefs the conference. I think people had misgivings about this legislation from the beginning. So then someone gets cold feet. Other people say that it was used as a negotiation tactic, but then I think her office denied that they weren't leveraging this bill for congestion pricing. So, like, it's just a mess. This was damaging for two reasons. You pissed off the legislature. A month before you get into budget negotiations, you made an ask. The legislature was going to do something that they probably weren't 100% on board for.
Which is clear
They
from
had
the multiple conferences this took.
multiple conferences. And like I know, there's one thing I know Andrea Stewart Cousins. When she says, well, the governor started it, so I'm glad the governor finished it, that's her way of being like this ain't me, this was her. And it's interesting, the governor's like, I don't introduce bills. Like,
Oy vey.
there is a complete lack of understanding sometimes about Albany and the implications of your actions and the dynamic between the conferences and the governor. And I think sometimes people forget that there's co-equal branches of government. And I understand that the governor is the governor, but you need the legislature. I just don't think anyone has mastered the dance. There is a dance. I ask for this. You say I can't do this. You say, what about this? We figure out a way. We figure out a way not to throw each other under the bus. And we find a way to collectively work together.
Right.
In the way that the special election bill ended, I feel like it threw two leaders under the bus. For what? Because Hakeem's not, I'm sorry, the minority leader is not, you know, helping folks out. And then the governor throws them under the bus. And now we have a budget that we have to deal with.
Is the governor, in this case, playing three-dimensional chess by pulling this off the
No,
table?
because the press people denied it.
Yes.
So, for a second, I was like, okay, she's trying to use this as a leveraging chip. But we were always told from the beginning, and you and I texted when this was going down. From the
Wow.
beginning.
Shedding the light on our conversations. I love it. Peeling
Whatever.
back the curtain.
Let people see, the Wizard of Oz. It was never about congestion pricing. It was always about the reconciliation bill and giving the minority leader some leverage. I don't know what leverage, since he publicly said he doesn't have any leverage, but it was for leverage purposes. It's just a mess.
Well, I've
The
made the
mess.
argument that the governor unilaterally disarmed and essentially put a safety on a gun when, if she's trying to be strong into negotiations of any kind with the president, she should load a bullet into the chamber, which I guess would be the equivalent of passing the bill and not
But let's
signing
be
it.
clear. Would it really do anything?
Well, that's my other thing. I don't think that the
Like,
president
this
cares.
bill, exactly.
Yeah.
This is the one thing that Democrats don't understand. I've lived through this in the state Senate. Republicans are unified at times. They are unified. So you think if a Republican was holding something up, the Republicans are going to say, let me go over to Minority Leader Jeffries and see if I can get something done with him. No, they're
Right.
going to be like, fuck that dude. And they're going to threaten the Republicans, and Trump's going to get on X and be like, this loser from whatever state won't pass my reconciliation bill. He's a bad guy. And you know what? The dude's going to fall in line.
Yeah.
We have seen that Trump has power over the Republican Party in ways that we haven't seen from any Republican leader in a very long time.
It's not the
So,
2009 Senate.
no. So, why anybody thought that holding that one vote was going to do anything is like beyond me. So, let me just stop right there before
Well,
I
do
get
you
myself.
think this is the last time we hear about this bill, or does it get picked up later in the session, assuming the governor says, oops, I made a miscalculation about my earlier decision?
Why?
Well, why? To increase voter turnout and save money for municipalities, Shontell, for good
I got a
government
bridge to
purposes.
sell you. Like, get out of here. No, they're not doing this. Yo, the Senate Republicans was pissed, laying aside stuff, doing all types of crazy stuff the other day. Nobody want to deal with this headache unless they have to deal with this headache. You also, like, from a perspective of governance, you look crazy.
Well, then let's not waste any more time on this topic, and we'll turn to another issue, which is the Trump Justice Department basically hitting pause on the corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And I say pause because they've reserved the right to restart the proceedings, which is something I wasn't familiar with, given my high school mock trial background. But anyway, Governor Hochul was asked this week whether this makes her rethink whether she'll use her powers to remove Adams from office, and her response was basically, remove the mayor. Can I even do something like that? Is that even in my powers? And it sounds like a much weaker stance than she took last year, when she obviously didn't exercise that power, but used maybe the threat of it to prompt some staff changes in the administration.
He had to change that staff no matter what.
Okay.
There was no way he could have continued with DOJ hanging, with every single person. Not every single person. Let me correct that.
Correct,
Because
yeah. You still
let me
had
correct
allies.
because no, yeah, let me just Chantel, watch yourself. With very close allies being under investigation, it was hard for him to keep stamina. The mayor is in a position that like I don't think that we recognize like how this is crazy. Like I'm just reading the Justice because I told you I was going to pull it up.
Hmm.
In the memo, they say the Justice Department has reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based. If like that's insane. So like that's like someone being like, "Hey, I'm gonna just like there's a lawsuit against you. Just don't do anything." And I don't know if you're guilty or innocent, but like, basically don't do anything. And one of the conditions is that the matter shall be reviewed by the confirmed U.S. attorney following the November
Right.
2025 mayoral election. So basically, you're on pause until the mayoral election later this year.
So, given that backdrop, what do you make of the response from Hochul and the top Democrats in D.C., Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer? Pretty mealy mouth responses at this point.
You want me to get in trouble?
You can be diplomatic.
I'm disappointed because, like, this tells me that the mayor is being held hostage for months.
Then do you think this has a practical impact on the Democratic primary for mayor?
I said this, I was quoted in the Times. Right now, this mayor race is paralyzed
Way to
because we
name
wait.
drop the Times, by the way.
Well, it was the first time. Anyways, someone made this point to me. I won't reveal my source, but they know who they are. Every day, Trump is in the news. Like you wake up, you see something from Trump on Twitter. He's all over your papers. He's all over everything. It is so hard for the mayor candidates right now to get traction. Anything they do, they have like they're doing like forums right now. They're doing press conferences. No one cares because Trump is taking all the oxygen. New York City, like people in the city should be like this race should be like the top thing talked about, but it's not. Maybe there'll be some pickup after petitioning, but the fact that like everyone's like, I feel like everyone's desensitized from what is going on a federal level and how it implicates the city level. And the lack of response from Schumer, from Jeffries, respectfully, from some of our electeds, city and state, it's it's embarrassing. I gotta give props to the AG. She's like, Trump, you coming for me? Let's go. That's the only person I see willing to go to war with Trump right now.
Is she the only one, though, with the power to do that? I mean, she has the office that can bring lawsuits. It's not like Governor Hochul can bring a lawsuit. It's the AG who has that kind of power.
I have yet to see anybody go on TV and criticize this president for anything that he has done the past 3 weeks, which is offensive and counter to New York. If and maybe I'm wrong. So please send me a video clip, send me something. You ever see It Never Rains in Philadelphia or It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yes.
And there's that one episode where he's trying to explain something. He's like on the whiteboard and he's
Pepe
like writing it down.
Silvio. Pepe Silvio.
That's how I feel right now. Because I'm like, yo, we're in danger. We're in danger. We're in danger. And everyone's just like, oh, Caucus weekend is this weekend. Oh, who cares about this local yokel crab bill? I always shit on crabs, and I don't know
Even
why.
horseshoe crabs?
Yeah, like I don't care about these things. I care about what's going on in the federal government because it impacts us.
What I'm
Um,
curious about is, does having this case at least postponed for the mayor give him any boost in the primary?
No, like he's been in conversation with Republican officials about possibly being on the Republican ticket. Like, get out of here.
So who do you think is well positioned then to win that primary?
Um, I will text you my thoughts on this because I'm not in the mood for the hate train I'm gonna get.
That sounds like an Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, that sounds like
Like you think Andrew Cuomo is going to be in the best position.
I think a couple things. Andrew Cuomo has not said he's gonna run. He has not said anything, so
Correct.
I don't know if he's running. I think Zellner is doing a great race. I'm gonna say something and people are gonna be so pissed at me. Zoran, his videos and shit. I actually texted him and was like, good ad because his content is good.
His social
He's
presence is
engaged.
unmatched.
It's unmatched and it's excellent. And like, I'm not a hater. Like, I texted him and was like, he did one where he went to visit everyone that gave like small
Hmm.
donations. That was a beautiful ad. It was well done. Now, obviously, he has ties to like production companies and things like that. So maybe that's why he has higher
But
quality.
everyone has that access. They all have money. They could buy smart people to make ads. It just his seemed to really click and seem to set it
He's
apart.
breaking through. He's breaking through in a way that I thought other people would break
Breaking
through. I
through on
think
social media. Do you think he's
on
breaking through in
social
real
media,
world?
there's a divide
Yeah.
where I think he has good content social media. I don't know if certain people are going to believe the things that he wants to.
Or if they're
That
hearing
he,
it. If you're not on Twitter, if you're not on Instagram, how do you know?
I think Myri right now is breaking through with all the stuff that's happening to Adams. Myri married me. I need him to be a little bit like forthcoming and let's out there a little bit more. But I'm gonna also be clear. I do think if Andrew Cuomo comes into the race, it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. Because right now, people want leadership. People want someone to go against Trump. And if you think like I have people texting me all the time because they know I'm friends with the Cuomo people like Melissa and stuff like that. Is he running? Is he running? I'm like, I don't know. But I think if he does run, I do think it's a game changer. I don't think Eric Adams can come back from this. You're seeing black preachers, you're seeing people in the black community, his largest base, be like Al Sharpton's like,
Thanks, but no thanks.
so like we're in a place where like I don't think Eric is the front runner. The liberals, like the far left, is coalescing around Zoran. What that means in real life, I don't know. I think Zellner's breaking through with his like legal analysis and stuff like that with the Eric Adams stuff, and maybe he's seen as the opposite black candidate. But I think we all need to be prepared if Andrew Cuomo runs. I do think he wins. Polling is
Oh.
indicating that too.
Well, finally, before I let you go, this weekend is caucus weekend, and I'm just curious, as someone who's experienced this, and you've alluded to your experiences in the past, what should people know about caucus weekend if you've never been there before?
If you are an introverted person, get ready. It's a lot of folks. I'm an introvert extrovert. I only go out for work purposes. It's a lot for me. It's overwhelming. I do think it's good if you want to see electeds. I think it's good. I'm always shocked at how people feel so comfortable just going up to electeds during caucus and being like, "Hi, I'm blah 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 da 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 da."
They might have some liquid courage.
A lot of them have liquid courage, but I think caucus is very good for first introductory meetings, but nothing will happen out of caucus unless you follow up. So, like, you'll meet someone, you'll give them your card, you got to get their card. You have to follow up and email the staffer. You have to do your work, like, because Andrea would literally get 300 to 400. Like, I have so many cards. And then, like, some staffers like putting it somewhere, but like, you have to do the work to stay in connection. I think if you're a consultant, and you're a consultant with connections or people, it's a good way to show your clients the relationships you have in
Mm.
Albany to show that you have relationships. My clients know I have relationships because I used to be the chief of staff. So, but for other people who don't have, my name, my
That
likeness,
pedigree.
you know, this would be the time to take your clients to caucus, to meet people, to speak to people. Coalitions are built, conversations are had, things happen in caucus. Like I will say, like caucus gets a bad rap because they think it's like, oh, you people are just drinking and partying. No,
They contain multitudes.
not the whole time. Like anything from like the works,
The
people don't give
workshops.
enough, they're very good. They don't get enough credit. They do not get enough credit. But Big Mama used to love caucus. It's called the People's Champ. I'm married now, so I'm gonna have a more laid back role in caucus and just relax myself. But I enjoyed caucus.
We've been speaking with Shontell Smith. She's the head of the New York practice for Tusk Strategies, where she is a partner. Shontell, thanks as always.
Thank you.
This weekend in Albany marks the 54th annual conference held by the New York State Association of Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislators. So in honor of this big event, which attracts thousands of attendees and is best known for its panel discussions and ritzy parties, we're checking in for a little explainer on what Caucus Weekend is really like and how it's put together. And our guest is Charlene Gayle, the association's executive director. Welcome to the show, Charlene. I really appreciate you making the time during what I imagine is a pretty busy period for you.
Most certainly. And first and foremost, thank you for having me on.
So I've never been to Caucus Weekend in Albany, but I've seen pictures, heard stories, and I've been around the Capitol complex as preparations are taken for the parts of the event that happen here, which is really massive in scope and takes up a lot of space here in Albany. How would you describe Caucus Weekend to the uninitiated, and what goes into planning multiple parties, receptions, brunches, workshops, and even a church service at the Capitol Center?
Wow. Okay, where do I start? So my team and I have the responsibility to house, educate, entertain in a safe manner over 6,000 people across the state of New York. Our mission is to educate, empower people living in marginalized area, so they can have fruitful discussions and collaborations throughout the weekend.
And when does planning for something like this begin? Is it the day after the caucus the previous year ends?
Doran. Actually, Doran, because often we'll have some of our guests, our elected officials say, this is great, but I have an idea. So as I'm going through the hallways of the LOB in the Capitol Center on Friday, I see visions for next year. So the planning actually starts when the weekend starts.
And I'm curious, how did this become something that fell under your domain? I know you have a background in real estate, and I know you're close with the association chair, Assemblymember Latrice Walker, but how did this become something that you're involved with?
Completely by default. So I was asked by Assemblywoman Chair Latrice Walker on her first year as chair to come up and help out. And when she asked me for my help, she said, I'm in Albany. So I live in Brooklyn. So right away, I assumed she meant Albany Avenue. Then she advised me, no, Albany, New York. I said, okay. So I did what any best friend does, is start driving. And 5 years later, I'm still here.
Well, what sort of learning curve was there for something like this? Because it's not just about planning an event that can accommodate 6,000 people. There are also, I imagine, a lot of egos involved when there's something like politics and there's personalities. So what's that like?
My acronym for egos is easing God out. And because I'm a woman of faith and a woman of belief, I could easily ease God back in when those egos are trying to ease God out. So all I do is smile. And at the end of the day, no, our bigger purpose is not one individual or one organization, is to serve the greater good for our members, constituents in the state of New York.
Well, this weekend attracts some of the most powerful political players to Albany, not just within the African American community, but white political leaders and white government affairs people, etc. Why do you think this is such a multicultural event? And has it always been that way?
Yes, and I think, let's be clear, right? Our members represent leadership. Our from the assembly side, Speaker Carl Hastie, he's head assembly speaker. That's leadership.
Senate Majority
Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins. So there is power in this organization.
The Attorney General?
From Attorney General, who used to work for one of the members, right? So there's power in the leadership. So obviously people want to be with leaders. And also they know how powerful this organization is. And then we also are nourishing our tomorrow's leaders.
So coming back to that idea of balancing all of these different interests, obviously you have the governor, you have the legislative leaders. Does everyone carve out their own sort of niche? Does everyone get to host like their own sort of event? Or do you have to tell some people, sorry, all the workshops are spoken for or all the receptions are spoken for? Maybe you can get an ad in a program or something.
Yes, yes, and yes. So naturally, we work with a lot of state elected leaders as well as federal elected leaders.
Right.
So we'll have congressional, city council, a number of statewide elected mayors. They all know the numbers in this audience. So, of course, they know there's a captivating audience. My first and main concern is my members, right? It is their weekend. And we also work with the city leaders, state leaders, and federal leaders. And the key thing is collaboration. So we know how to fit their schedule with our members that will best suit our guests throughout the weekend.
So the parties obviously get a lot of the attention, but the weekend includes these workshops that happen during the day. And I'm curious who you feel is the audience for them and what you hope to accomplish with those workshops during the weekend.
Sure. So while we have the workshops, we also have a youth conference where we have about 800 students in the Egg Theater. So we also do workshops for them. So our age range for the workshops is anywhere from 18 to seniors. And it's important that our members address what is happening in their district. We also discuss legislation that our members passed last year. How does it trickle down into their neighborhoods? And let's talk about the history of why this weekend happens, right? This is our 54th year. And the initial purpose of this weekend was to discuss the people's budget. So it's imperative that our members have collaboration with pillars in the community, clergy, and a lot of local community leaders, state leaders, city leaders, and they want to hear from their constituents to know what matters. So the purpose of this weekend is to discuss what matters in your district, in your neighborhood, in your block, in your home. What matters?
Well, you mentioned the young people that are involved in this weekend. And another major component of Caucus Weekend is the Scholarship Gala. And I want to talk a little bit about your plans for the scholarships this year. But obviously, we need to talk about what happened predating you, and the association came under the microscope for raising a lot of money, but in some years not giving to scholarship and other years giving a small percentage. How do you move past that? It's been a couple years since the AG settlement, but what do you have in place to ensure stuff like that never happens again?
Oh, and I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because we always have to address the elephant in any room. And under the leadership of Chairwoman Latrice Walker, when she came into this organization, it was tumultuous times for this organization. It was a lot of bad decisions, bad management. So she knew she had to get a new executive director, myself. We have a new set of attorneys, accountants, auditors, a new board. She really turned the ship around for this organization. Let's be clear, this organization almost went under. But because the leadership of Chairwoman Latrice Walker to identify how important this organization is. I mean, when she first came up, right, to this conference, she tells the story that she borrowed her mom's church dress years ago, and now she's running it. So we know the importance, especially our new board, realize the importance of our scholarships. And when I came in, it was really in financial troubles. But we were able to maintain the integrity of this organization. And I'm happy to announce, and we'll discuss it at the gala, that this year we paid out over $140,000 in scholarship in 2024. So I'm on the track to double that this year. So it's only getting better.
And how do you end up deciding who gets a scholarship? Because that was another area where it seemed like there was a lack of clarity in terms of how those were awarded. What's the process like now?
Sure. So, and we have also a board, and we go through board training, and our attorneys, we take their guidance, especially by the bylaws. So what we have now is called a scholarship vetting committee. So all applications will go through the vetting committee. They also asked us applications to submit. We wanted our potential tomorrow's leaders who are receiving these scholarships to talk about what are their community participation, right? So one of our requirements is to also write an essay on what does being in the community, or what does your community, or what are you doing for your community? So it's a combination of community involvement along with your educational background in order to qualify for the scholarships.
So thinking about the weekend, is there an unspoken code of conduct? Are there rules that people need to follow, like don't always approach the majority leader and the speaker, or don't get too drunk during certain events? Is there an unspoken code of conduct or anything like that?
I mean, let's be clear. This weekend, it makes leaders, right? It makes deals. It makes good things for the communities. And because it's social, it probably also makes babies. So, marriages were created out of this weekend. Babies were created out of this weekend. And it's important for us to educate and entertain. We work hard, we play hard, but we also have to be respectable to each other. And we are so grateful to God that we could entertain and respect each other's boundaries, but also, too, we could collaborate and network. The main objective of this weekend is not to be standoffish, but if you do see those leaders in the hallway, approach them saying, hi, introduce yourself. I tell all our young people, talk to everybody with a pen. A pen, whether they're elected leaders, whether they're a part of I would call it our Divine Nine sororities or fraternities, whether they're part of the clergy or community engagement. Anybody with a pen, ask them for that card, because that card could change the trajectory of the rest of your life. So we want people to go up to our elected leaders and introduce themselves and have conversations.
Well, you mentioned the idea of entertaining, and the parties are known for having some big name performers in the past, although, to be fair, some of them are a little past their prime. I'm curious, how do you go about getting these big acts? And the word on the street is that Wyclef Jean and Nas are going to be the headliners this year. Is that true?
Hey, wait a minute. What do you mean past your prime? What age is prime?
Well, Sugar Hill Gang wasn't exactly on top of the world in 2023 or 2024. They're more, a couple decades earlier.
Actually, I beg to differ. Okay. It was a celebration of the 50th year of hip-hop.
Touche.
Right? And if you didn't know, now ask somebody. I know that was part of a song. I just don't know what it was.
If you don't know, now you know.
Now you know, right. And as the word of fact shows, yesterday's prices aren't today's prices, right? But yes, we are having Wyclef Jean, a fabulous entertainer, on Saturday night, and we're really happy about that. He's a cultural, inspirational artist who also has a lot of community involvement. And, Wyclef is a producer. He's playing his guitar. So we're excited about that.
Well, how do you make those connections? Are these people who are already aware of the association and or maybe have connections to the lawmakers and the politicians here? Or do you have to try to go out and recruit these entertainers just like any other special event might?
Combination of both. I mean, that's why I'm successful in being the executive director. Is my prior relationships with some of those in the entertainment industry, and some people don't know about us, right? So we're able to share who we are and our mission. And, because we are a nonprofit, so maybe traditionally they would charge astronomical amounts for their services. But because they believe in our shared mission, then, you didn't hear this from me, but they offer us a phenomenally discounted rate to entertain our guests and be a part of our good cause.
Well, in your time going to Caucus Weekend, any favorite memories stand out to you? Or maybe things that you're not allowed to talk about at this point?
No hidden secret. It was just, and I will say this, first time I came to Caucus was probably 20 years ago, begrudgingly coming up. It's like, okay, I'll see what this was. It was completely overwhelming as my first time. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I remember going when Chairwoman Walker first was a member of this organization, and we were excited, thinking that our seats would be near the stage, but we were closer to the door. And she said, one day I'm going to get closer to that stage. And now my good friend Latrice Walker is the one on stage, and I'm the one behind her. So, we are living our dreams.
Well, finally, you've been, rubbing elbows with politicians, elected leaders for years now. Would you ever want to run for elected office?
I can't even run for a bus.
All right. Well, we've been speaking with Charlene Gayle. She's the executive director of the New York State Association of Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislators. Charlene, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
You got it, David. And I hope you can make it. It's going to be a fun weekend. And hope all your listeners who are in the city of Albany, first and foremost, thank you, Albany, for tolerating us, right? As we descend into your city from Brooklyn, from Buffalo, from Long Island. Thank you, the city of Albany. And David, thank you.
Well, I think they thank you for filling up all the hotel rooms this weekend.
Yes. And the revenue. Don't forget the revenue.
And I'm on vacation next week, but that does not mean the podcast will be taking a break. We'll actually have a very special episode, a fantasy draft that you will not want to miss. We have not done anything like it before. And feel free to send us some stories about your caucus weekend if you're in Albany over the Valentine's Day weekend. We'd love to hear about what you experienced, even if it's an anonymous recollection.
Show that you at least acknowledge it, because you don't want that it's like, oh, you didn't get me anything. Like, you think she's laid back and she doesn't care, but all women kind of care.